Taoiseach, the government's approach to antigen testing is just not good enough. In the midst of a fourth wave of the virus, after 2 years, our health service is clearly under enormous ongoing pressure. The government tells us our best weapon to stem this surge is personal responsibility. The people are trying, Taoiseach. Most of them are doing their best. So why are you not giving them the basic tools that they need to win this fight? There are too many missed opportunities and mixed messages to even mention. So what I want to ask you, Taoiseach, is why your government has yet to roll out a system of subsidised antigen testing. We were all under the impression the Cabinet would agree a scheme yesterday, but incredibly, it's been reported the Cabinet didn't even discuss COVID yesterday. The biggest threat the country is facing, and it didn't even get a mention. Last night, Leo Varadkar said a scheme for subsidised antigen testing may not be brought to Cabinet until next week. The lack of urgency and failure to respond at speed to a rapidly escalating emergency is truly shocking, Taoiseach. Or at least it should be shocking. But the CEO of the Irish Pharmacy Union, Darragh O'Loughlin, shed some light on this delay on The Tonight Show last night. He said, and I quote, "It's very difficult for us and the HSE to put a plan in place to roll out antigen testing when the government hasn't made decisions about what they want to do. Nobody knows when exactly or to what extent the government will be subsidising the tests because that decision just hasn't been made." Taoiseach, it is standard in any negotiation for each side to know what it wants, what it is negotiating for. Yet, according to Mr O'Loughlin, the government hasn't the foggiest idea what kind of subsidy scheme it wants to put in place. This is a mess. We know antigen testing is not a silver bullet, but they are a vital tool in this fight, one that many people can simply not afford to use currently. There's a strong case for them to be free. So, Taoiseach, will you stop the wrangling about subsidies and just get them out to people so they can use them as required and in line with public health advice? And my questions are, first of all, why is the Pharmacy Union in the dark about what the government wants them to do? What kind of subsidy are you prepared to put in place? When will it be available? And why is your government so slow to respond when we all know that speed is of the essence?
First of all, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the Irish people for responding to the current situation. All of the research is indicating, particularly in the last week or two, and from our announcement, that people are adjusting behaviour quite significantly, which is ultimately the way to reduce the current pressure on hospitals and in relation to COVID-19. And I watched what the WHO had to say in terms of the overarching issues. If we all stand back, because every week there's a magic bullet somewhere that people keep raising. But fundamentally, we're dealing with a very transmissible Delta variant. We've reopened our society and our economy to levels that we haven't really witnessed since the beginning of the pandemic. There's a winter seasonality issue. We're moving indoors all across Europe, and they're predicting well over 500,000 deaths across Europe. And relatively, we want to protect that life and limb. And a whole range of other issues that Dr. Butler of the WHO has indicated. And the booster campaign, he said, should focus on the immunocompromised, the elderly, the healthcare. And we're making we're very good progress now on all of those key target areas in terms of over 80s, residents of long-term care facilities, immunocompromised, and the over 70s has been quite dramatic administration of boosters, up to about 630,000 boosters administered now. And in terms of testing, the antigen testing is a supplemental tool, an important one which I believe in, and has been rolled out much more significantly in the last 6 months than any other previous period of the pandemic. As you know, every close contact now is given antigen tests free, and it's sent out to them. And I think over 100, in terms of that issue, it's about 3,000 a day. In terms of giving out free to close contracts. In agriculture alone, 101,000 rapid tests have been done across the industry. In higher education, close to 25,000 antigen tests have been used in a project there. In the Early Learning and Care Centre, HSE have run pilot projects. And so there's been a much broader use of antigen testing more generally in schools. It will start on Monday in respect of the use of antigen testing free in terms of classroom pods and so on, where cases are identified. And then in respect of the expert group did recognise a subsidised model. Again, there has been advice from the CMO, which is cautioning in terms of how that gets rolled out. Government has to, you've raised the pharmacy union. Look, they would have an interest in this from a number of perspectives. We want to work with as broad a range as possible to get a distribution of antigen tests to reduce the costs for people out there in terms of a routine utilisation of antigen, but that must be paralleled with a constant, consistent communication message about how to properly use it.
You really didn't shed much light on that, Taoiseach. You know, 2 weeks ago, the CMO advised that anybody engaging in so-called high-risk activities, most of which simply just involve actually going out or meeting with other people, should do an antigen test twice a week. So that was the advice, the most recent advice. That people should, if they're out and about, if they're mixing, they should do an antigen test twice a week. Antigen tests are very expensive. The Minister for Health said initially that it was his intention to make them available free of charge. You've said more recently that there's going to be a subsidy scheme. Now, when are you going to decide on that subsidy scheme? There's a real urgency about this, Taoiseach. You know, we're in the midst of an emergency. People want to use all of the tools available to them, and you have to be supporting people to do that. It's not only about personal responsibility, it's ensuring that your government plays its part as well. So when are we going to get a decision in relation to at least subsidised antigen testing? Do we have to wait another week? And why can't you inform people this week?
Well, first of all, I would say that yes, we do have to support people. And we are right across the board in terms of COVID-19, in terms of very significant expansion of the PCR testing, for example, with 210,000 in the last week. I know, but it's all part of it. There's no one silver bullet, Deputy, and that's the point I'm making. But there tends to be every week is the point I would make. And we are, as I have said, in terms of antigen testing, there has been a significant expansion of the use of antigen testing, given out freely by the government. In terms of, at the end of Friday the 19th of November, for example, about 61,000 fully vaccinated asymptomatic close contacts were registered for delivery of free antigen kits, 100,000 used by agriculture.
Will there be a scheme?
And so forth. And there is a scheme being developed. But we have to get best value as well for the public purse. That's important, that we just don't dive into it.
But when will we hear?
And so on. And that will happen, and we will bring the details to you. That is our intention to do that, and we've indicated that, and we will do that. But I would again say, standing back from this, that the fundamental variables that will really change this is actually reducing socialisation, which people are doing, will be the booster campaign, which is going to have an impact in terms of the prevalence and the continuation of disease. Those are the key, in my view, approach to this.